Okay, hello again, my fellow Americans. Here we are, another episode of On the Range podcast with my friend Rick Hogg. How you doing, Rick?
Doing great, Mark. How you doing, buddy?
Well, this is the first full-fledged video podcast that we've attempted. I think it's going to be something that people are going to enjoy, whether that's laughing at us or enjoying the content. Either way, it's good to have you here doing this again. I'm really enjoying this podcast thing.
Great to be on, Mark, as always. And I see the battle of the studios going back and forth. So,
well, you got to up the game. You know, it seems like you have one thing, then I got one thing, and it's going back and forth. It's like the battle of the Christmas lights from your neighbors, you know, that you go through every year.
Man.
Yeah,
I can get a couple
I've been
more.
involved in a couple of those skirmishes before.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, guys, welcome back to the podcast On the Range with War HOGG Tactical and Kelley Defense, are brought to you. You can check us out on IG at On the Range Podcast. You can also join us on IG at War HOGG Tactical and Kelley Defense on IG, and then YouTube as well, War HOGG Tactical and Kelley Defense. Don't forget to visit our websites as well at warhogg.com and kellydefense.com. So, Rick, we thought it would be a good idea to launch the video podcast for the first time during this time for one very specific reason. One is we're at the end of the National Police Week. A lot of police memorial events going on across the country. Some of them have been overshadowed a little bit with attendance because of the COVID. But we're also approaching Memorial Day weekend, the holiday weekend. And we thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and start it this week because of that. And that was your idea. Absolutely. I appreciate that. What a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's I think it's fitting. It's funny because a couple other podcasts done this weekend, one specifically with Killcliff. They're going to do some live streaming this weekend in remembrance of Memorial Day. And I think it's just important for the viewers and listeners out there to understand Memorial Day is the day that we as a nation mourn our fallen. So it's not to be confused with Veterans Day when you thank a veteran or those that have served, but Memorial Day is for those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Really, and I kind of mentioned this with the Killcliff, and if things get emotional, pardon me, guys, it's what happens. But, you know, Memorial Day is, for some of us, it's every day.
Yeah.
Lot of buddies lost. Obviously, Joe Andres, he's my Achilles heel when it comes to all this. He was killed Christmas Eve, 2005. But, you know, here's the thing, guys. I'm very open as far as the emotional side goes, and I think it's important that guys understand it doesn't make you any less of a man, any less of a warrior, police officer, whatever the case may be. Hey, life happens. You know, it gets emotional at times during these certain points. It's fine. We get over it. You know, I can still do my business. You know, it happened at Panteo, you know, Profile of Courage. And again, it was important that they left it in there so that guys understand, hey, man, it's a part of life, you know, and it makes you, you know, my biggest advice word to people out there, it makes you no less of a man, you know. 13 combat deployments, man, it's a long time.
Yep.
A lot of friends lost. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not my favorite holiday, I should say, but it's the most important one. It is, you know, it bellies up right next to Police Week. Your friend Joe, I know that's something that you want to keep his story going and all the other buddies. Same with the police officers that we've lost. You know, they say it's Police Week, but really the predominant theme of that entire week is memorializing all the officers that had fallen the year prior and up until the point of Police Week. But like for us, you know, our friends have been gone for some time now, but they're still out there in harm's way, the military and law enforcement. And it's a solemn reminder of how dangerous it is and how important it is, and how much, you know, I value the guys that are still doing it and the guys that have done it, like yourself and Joe and my friends who we've lost in the line of duty.
Yeah, and you know, on that, Mark, I just want to bring up, you know, especially for the LEOs out there, you know, Mike Mosier was recently killed. His wife, Corinne, there's a petition going on, and you can see it in the show notes here, but She's trying to petition the White House that basically, homes around the country have a blue light on during police week. So just a way to kind of memorialize those officers out there. So take a look at the petition, read it over, kind of see what she's looking to do. And if you guys support it, sign it. And again, it's just a way to show to, the men and women in blue, man, that they're out there every single day. Unfortunately, they've got a bullseye painted on their target, on their back as a target. So just remember them. And, guys like Mike that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Here he is just trying to go to work, sees a hit and run in progress, tracks down the suspect. And next, they wind up in a gunfight. Mike ends up killing the suspect, but unfortunately, succumbed to his wounds. So just remember those guys, all those, men and women out there serving, our local communities and the sacrifices they've gone through, on top of obviously Memorial Day and our U.S. service members that have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Yeah.
And in addition to specifically some of the show notes that we mentioned, the ones that we don't mention, we'll also put in there. There's several charities and pages and foundations that benefit, even the Gold Star teenagers. We've mentioned their stuff and put that out. It's a great organization. It's kind of tough right now, but we can still.
But just so in case the viewers or listeners don't know, so Gold Star basically represents it's a family member, or it's a family that has lost a U.S. service member. And the Gold Star teens are obviously, they've lost a parent somewhere, in the GWAT. So when we talk about the Gold Star teens, that's just so the viewers and listeners understand, because sometimes a lot of people aren't savvy to that Gold Star term. So if you happen to see, I know here in the state of North Carolina, they've actually got Gold Star family license plates. So again, if you see those people, just understand they've lost somebody in the war on terror, or it could have been, beforehand, but they've lost a U.S. service member in combat.
And those organizations do some amazing stuff. I remember a couple of years ago, they have those retreats and the big trips for those young folks, and they do a lot of good work. And then there's a couple of, the Green Beret Foundation. I know we've pushed their stuff out, Navy SEAL Foundation, and some other things. So we'll make sure we add all those things in there.
Yeah, buddy.
And plus, there were some items that were being sold, like some of the Fallen and the Remembrance bands. I think we pushed that out once before. We'll repeat that again.
Yep.
So
for Mike.
For Mike Mosier, and help support his family and what they're going through right now. It's kind of a simple thing for us to do, but makes a big impact on the other end.
Absolutely.
If everybody does it. So kudos for those guys setting it up. So I know you and I have spoken about Joe several times. 2005. Why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about Joe? And I know it's tough, but it's one of those things that we want to continue through all the other soldiers that knew him, get those stories out.
Yeah, so really, when I talk about Joe, I don't so much focus on the actions that happened that night, because his actions saved a lot of guys. Big firefight that night, and Joe was kind of the lead going in. But really, I because people will forget that. But what I want to do is tell people about Joe, i.e. the Baghdad Christmas cake thief. So
great story.
So back in the day, and it won't make sense here. And for the listeners, you won't catch it all. For the viewers, I got a little prop here. I'll show you here in a second. But basically, Little Debbie's cakes, Joe used to steal those. They were in the shape of a Christmas tree. He would only eat one, and then he would stick it somewhere in my kit or my bed or in my boot or who knows where. The thing was, I didn't know who was doing it. And really, I guess what makes this thing, so powerful and why it's such a important memory for me is I caught him just hours before going out the door, and unfortunately, he was killed, shortly thereafter. But I caught him getting ready to stick, a Christmas cake in my stuff, and I'm like, "It's you." So at least what we do in the Hog House, and again, anywhere I've got a public forum that I can get the word out, I say this: "Hey, you may not be a big cake fan, Little Debbie, whatever, but I said buy it and do it in remembrance of Joe." So I mean, if you take away this, remember the name Joe Andres, get you, especially at Christmas time. The Little Debbie cakes are out. Get one, unfortunately, they're packaged one at a time. But I'll tell you this: my wife, God bless her soul, she ended up finding the red, white, and blue Little Debbies that are packaged to a box, and she bought them strictly because of Joe. She's like, "Hey, check these out." So, yep, she'll pull one out, eat one, and then I get the other. So it's just our little way that, we remember. And I get it. It's all right, guys. It's not going to kill you. I'm not a super big Little Debbie's fan, but it won't kill you to have one and just do it in remembrance of him. So that's kind of my story I try to pass on. And now that they're out for, I guess, 4th of July is their new thing. It helps keep that tradition going. If they've got something for Easter, maybe for the springtime, and I don't know what for the fall, hey man, we can get all 4 seasons where we're doing something remembering him. So just that's my little thing. That's my takeaway for the listeners and viewers. Remember the name Joe Andres, obviously Mike Mosier as well. But think about, hey, get those Little Debbie cakes, only eat one, and then give it to somebody else in the family. And it just keeps that tradition going. Yeah.
It's a great story. So, It's a great story. What do you typically do on Memorial Day?
So, this is going to be an interesting year. So typically Memorial Day, there's some type of Memorial Day something going on. Whether it's down at the Airborne Special Operations Museum where the SOF K9 Memorial's at. I spoke there, I think it was 2018. Whether you do something like that, whether you do something on post, usually going to some type of formal Memorial Day ceremony. And there's direct ties, to that. Obviously with the SOF K9 Memorial, knowing some of the dogs there, being there, when those dogs were killed, the actions that happened, and then the countless number of brothers, sons, fathers that are home today because of those dogs. No different with the stuff, Fort Bragg also, and I'll get my composure here. Fort Bragg also lays out boots, where they put a boot per every individual that was killed in the GWAT. And they lay it out there and they put a little name tag attached to. So we'll usually make a pit stop, and we start going down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, I always try to hit some type of an event, some type of memorial. There's never a shortage of those places. A lot of times you drive by them, you don't think much about them, but I always try to visit them, take photos of them, post them on IG. That's not the only reason why. The real reason why I want to go there and I want to read the stuff. I want to read whose names are on the wreaths and such and flags that they post up. And I know a lot of that stuff's not going to happen because of the COVID, but at the same time, there will be, those big wreaths that foundations and things like that. I always like to read, what they're honoring and see if there's something that I can do to help or to push out their information. But I always like going to some of the functions. We typically have some runs that honor soldiers and law enforcement and the fallen. But, like 5Ks and color runs and things like that. And they're named after certain individuals. That's not going to happen this year, but there are some functions that are going to be able to lay out some flags and stuff. And I always go visit those things as well. And, even if you've just been in harm's way, I think most folks who have been in harm's way realize the importance of it. So it's a little different than just cooking hot dogs and hanging out and having an extra day off of work and watching NASCAR for us. And
and that's the key part, right? So I think, like with Killcliff, they've done a great job. So they're doing, the Salute to America streaming video. I'm not sure, all the details, and probably by the time we air this, it'll already be out and going, but it's, but how do we adjust with the COVID where we can't get together, and I think obviously, you're seeing a lot more things streaming, a lot more televised, stuff. And I think, unfortunately, like you said, hey, people need to understand it's not about the day off. It's not about, the hot dogs barbecue. That's a sidebar, and that's your freedom that those individuals gave you. So as long as people remember that, I think that's the key takeaway, for Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And again, it just shouldn't be that one day, for some of us, it's every day, but it's at least a day that we sit there as a nation and go, hey, we should remember those that let us enjoy our freedoms.
Yep. Yeah. It's not, it's expensive. Totally worth it. I'm never going to say that it's not worth it for us to go out there and defend, but it is expensive, and it hurts, and it's horrible for the families. It's horrible for our friends. It's horrible for us, who've known them and loved them and worked alongside of them. But it's something that, I appreciate everybody willing to sign on that line and put themselves in danger. And unfortunately, those checks are cashed sometimes, and it's an important day for all of us who know what we're talking about. And I think a lot of people do. It's especially now. It's hard to find someone who hasn't been touched a little bit by some of this that we're talking about.
Totally. I mean, and here's the thing, kind of like what I brought up, and I keep going back to kind of the Killcliff thing, but really, for obviously my viewers, they can see my bracelet, and anybody that follows me on IG or anything that I do, I've always got my bracelet, and obviously it's Joe's memorial bracelet. But really, it's, for the listeners out there, if you see somebody that's got either a silver or black bracelet on, usually have somebody's name on there. To me, it's just, if I see somebody else with it, I inquire, and I try to help with that healing process. Hey, who you got? And it just lets them hopefully tell a little bit of the story, and we share back and forth. So, but like I said, you're not, just like you're bringing up, you're not far removed from somebody that has been touched by somebody that's paid the ultimate sacrifice. Yeah. So whether it's actually, a friend, family member, whatever the case may be, it's close. So, yeah. Yeah.
So again, we'll put a lot of these things that, where maybe someone wants to get a hold of one of those bracelets, the one's for Mike or one's for a fallen soldier. It really doesn't matter who it is. You know what I mean? Get one, find out their story, sport it proudly. I have several of them. Some of them law enforcement, some of them military guys. But, the police week, segue into the police side of the house for the Memorial Day and for the end of police week. I have, unfortunately, like you said, it's not just one or two, it's several, and we can't talk about everybody today. But there's, in December of 1997, there was a couple of guys that were teammates of mine from the criminal apprehension team. I had just recently been transferred to the undercover narcotics unit, so I was no longer in the CAT team, is what they called it, criminal apprehension team. And they were serving a warrant. They'd been back to the apartment a couple of times prior to the date of their deaths, and they made it inside the apartment. And one assailant murdered my two friends. Ronald Jeter and Daniel Pope were two great guys. They were partners. Ron and I were partners prior to me being transferred. He was a Marine Corps veteran. And, it didn't take long, and they were surprised and they were killed. Shortly thereafter that, the assailant ran out and was confronted by another police officer, and he ended up taking his own life in front of them. These two guys went out every day, did their job, and they were just cut short from one guy who just didn't want to go to jail for beating his wife. And they knew how serious and dangerous this guy was to the other party in the domestic violence, and that's why they were trying to pick him up, and ultimately end up paying with their lives trying to apprehend this dangerous criminal. So it was, I've had the opportunity to go and see their names on the walls and visit some of the memorials for the law enforcement officers in D.C. And I always go by and check out Vietnam wall. I check out the Korean War memorial, and there's never you can never read all the names, but you just have to remember, like you said, about touching the lives of all these folks that are on those walls and are memorialized, have dozens of people that cared about them, dozens of people that worked with them and are right alongside them when they were in danger. And it's tough. It's tough. And, phrase you come up with for yourself to accept it?
So I think for me, it goes back to faith that is kind of my underlying factor, right? So I got no qualms talking about saying it, obviously, man of God has a plan, and it was their time, or they were there for that reason. And you don't necessarily question. You do. I mean, I'd be a fool to sit there and go, no, you're going to sit there and go, why? But at the end of the day, when kind of the dust clears, and unfortunately for me, it's, it took 11 years to really mourn for Joe as I was starting to get ready to, transition out. But, you never question their actions, what they did. Mm-hmm. They went doing their jobs, doing something they loved, and, they paid the ultimate sacrifice for it. And it goes back to this, at the end of the day, whether it's the wives, the family members, whatever, even to this day, guys that have been killed many, many years ago, I still tell the family I'm sorry for their loss.
Yeah.
And, just have faith that, hey, everything happened for, whatever the reason was. And, you just take it from there. So, and just share the stories. That's the biggest thing is, keep the names going, share the stories. Yeah, we got, our Christmas cake now, the little 4th of July Debbie cakes, but keep those traditions going, keep those names alive, because that is what helps, with their stories. And that's what helps memorialize them as far as what they did in their sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah, I failed to mention that Ron was a SWAT team member as well, and I want to make sure that everybody knows about that as well. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think that's what even some of the stories that personally happened to me. I think talking about those with you and I and our family members and stuff is probably the only true way that I feel like I am healing from it. And, we have family members that are, military. We have family members that are into or going into law enforcement. So it's even because of Ron, Dan, Joe, and some of these other guys, I couldn't be more proud of our young people that are knowing the stories that we tell, are still willing to go out there and do a very tough job for us. And I can't thank them enough and be any more proud of those guys either.
Yeah. I mean, for all the guys out there, whether it's LE or military, again, it's a choice. They're volunteers regardless, and
right.
Hats off to them, especially for those going into the military, because we're still a country at war. People like to forget that we are still a country at war. We still, are incurring casualties, and yet there's still people signing up to go amongst those ranks, and, hats off to them.
Right.
Even with law enforcement. I mean, the number of law enforcement officers killed is out of control. Mm-hmm. And it seems like there's a total disregard for authority, and, hey, let me go, kill a police officer. And yet you still have people signing up to do that. I know some departments are struggling numbers wise. But there's still people willing to fill the ranks, and that's commendable. I mean, hats off to you. So, and you just got to sit there and, hey, say a prayer every day for those guys, whether you're law enforcement, military, that, each and every one of them come back home safe to their families.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
And then there's some due diligence that there's, required on those guys. I mean,
sure.
You got to get out there and train, man.
Yeah.
You got to, especially for the LE guys, even for the mil guys. I mean, yeah, the Army's got the military's got their systems in place for training, but, for the LE guys, you got to get out there and go, hey, man, that guy you might be going against might be better than you, might get the drop on you. I mean, you got to be switched on. So
yeah,
definitely got to stay in the game. Well,
thanks for sharing your story. Thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for your service, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Here's one thing I want to caveat real quick, Mark.
Sure.
You know, again, and I'm going to harp on it. And I think it's important, you know, for the listeners, viewers, you know, especially those that have lost somebody, whether it's been on the law enforcement side or military side, you know, chat, you know, go talk with somebody else, because here's the deal. You know, have me and Mark shared some of the same experiences? We have. Have we also not? We have. But the similarity is we can share those experiences and kind of help with that grieving process. So don't be afraid to go talk to somebody. And then at the same token, don't let this stigma of, hey, you can't have emotions. And I got it. You know, we're kind of taught, and we grew up in that generation. Hey, you don't have emotions. You don't show your emotions. It makes you weak. I'm here to tell you, listen here, man, if somebody comes in my front door or somebody wishes me ill intent, I've got no dramas, you know, doing what I need to do to defend myself or my family members. Is there some emotional baggage that comes with it? Yep, absolutely. You know, did I put partitions and walls up, you know, as a protection measure while I was in? Yeah, sure. And I'm sure there's people out there that have done that, but I'm telling you, it doesn't help with the healing process. So just look to, you know, chat. And like I said, at the end of the day, it doesn't make you any less of a man for doing that.
Yeah, it's a good point you make because, as you know, we've spoken about it. I was affected very closely by a law enforcement officer, friend of mine, friend away from the job as well, who did take his own life just a little more than a year ago. And I know that you and I have known folks actually served together that did that as well and caused some harm to other folks. And that's a great point. You got to talk to all you veterans and law enforcement guys out there. If you know someone that you believe is struggling with, you know, give them a call, you know, and urge them to give you a call if they're struggling as well. And maybe we can put out some stuff in the show notes to maybe help out, you know, someone who's going through a rough time. Because I guarantee there's people going through a rough time, and you can help, you can make a difference. It's a tough deal.
Yeah, and here's the thing, guys. They may drop a subtle hint, and I'm not going all that, hey, everyone's out there looking to commit suicide, but it may be something subtle. And again, this is where, you know, I think the whole emotion thing comes in. Don't be afraid, you know, to kind of cross that barrier, because I've swiped through text traffic. You know, I had a buddy of mine that killed himself, and I'm sitting there going, where did I miss it?
Yeah.
Where's it at? You know, and there was nothing there. But my point being, you know, don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to talk. Don't be, you know, in the same token, if you are thinking of that, reach out, man. I mean, you know, talk to somebody, because trust me, it's not worth it, man. You can get through whatever issues, dramas you're facing. You know, and you just need to be able to find the right source and get that done.
Yeah. And that goes for any of our listeners, if you are or not, or never have been law enforcement or military. I know Rick and I believe that the world is better with you in it. So don't go down that road, reach out and call someone. You gotta, I know everybody doesn't feel like they have someone that they can call, but most of the time, if you think about it, you'll have someone that you can reach out to that will be willing to and want to help and know what you're going through. So, yeah. All right, Rick. Well, I think we'll start to wrap this up. Happy Memorial Day. Buddy. I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. I know that we'll be seeing each other soon here in less than 10, 11 days. And
end of the month.
And we're almost through May. And it's been a pleasure having you here today with me. And hopefully people enjoy this. And hopefully, you know, everybody stays safe this Memorial Day weekend and beyond. And
that's it, man.
It's been a pleasure. But don't forget, guys, when you go visit us, On the Range podcast on any platform that you find, or the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that like button so we can whoop up on this algorithm monster that's punching us in the face every chance it gets. Yeah. So
don't forget the subscribe or follow button.
Yeah. And give us your comments. Let us know your questions, and let us know what you like and what you don't like. So anyway, have a good weekend, Rick. Be talking to you soon, buddy. Everybody else have a good weekend.
Yeah, sounds good, Mark. You guys take care.
All right, buddy.